Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Carl with Empower Multimedia. We talk about how to help college students maximize their time in college, and we talk about entrepreneurship so maybe one day you could be your own boss. On today's topic, we're going to be talking about the future of the workforce. I thought it would be a great time to talk about this since we are going through a pandemic. And it has forcefully made a lot of workers work remote. Now, in the light of recent events in the global pandemic known as COVID-19, there has been many transitions in the workforce and functionings of businesses. Not only are some workers required to work remotely, many businesses have been forced to close down to it being classified as non-essential. Some of these businesses range from retail to restaurants to other types of businesses, right? We've been in quote unquote lockdown for, I would say, roughly 3 to 4 months now. And it's opened the eyes to many people in the United States and throughout the world in general. Currently, the pandemic is reshaping our societal belief systems and values about work itself. So, let's begin. In the past, the pre-internet days, there was no such thing as remote work. If you had a job, you would have to either drive there, take the train, take the bus, ride a bike, or even walk. Maybe if you're like in New York, where things might be relatively close. Now the internet, the web of connectivity that I like to call it, it has disrupted by far the most things in society of all time. One of the biggest disruptions in recent times is actually the workforce. Because of the internet, we are able to have social media, emails, websites, we can buy things, we can watch things, we can learn things, the list goes on. But because of that, people are not necessarily required to be physically present at work anymore. Now it's more apparent that the internet is going to be affecting the workforce even greater due to the pandemic. Now, in terms of moving forward and transitioning in society, the writing was already on the wall. Don't fool yourself. It was all around you. The more jobs that were becoming remote, things on Indeed, ZipRecruiter, Career Builder, things like that, you're seeing slowly but surely more remote opportunities. You don't believe me? Well, let's look at some of these stats. So what you have in front of you is trends in remote work growth. Now, in the last 5 years, growth in remote work has grown over 44%. In the last 10 years, that number was at 91%. In the last 12 years, that number is at 159%. As you can see, this trend was not going away by any time soon. Now, if we didn't have the pandemic, the ratio of remote workers to in-office workers, I really can't say what that number would be. But because of the pandemic, that number would forever drastically change, in my honest opinion. In fact, according to Zinc, this survey shows that by the end of 2020, remote workers will be accounted for about 75% of the US workforce, according to the International Data Corporation. Links in the description. Now, I'm not saying this is a bad thing or a good thing. I'm actually trying to be very objective of what I think is going to happen. But with that being said, let's actually look at the pros versus cons of this transition in society. Let's start with the pros. Pros. Lower carbon footprint. It's quite simple. The less that people have to drive and pollute the world, the better. Especially with all the climate change that's going on in the world, the less carbon emission that we can output, the better it's going to be. Existing telecommuters reduce greenhouse gas emissions by the equivalent of taking over 600,000 cars off the road for a year. If the work-at-home workforce expanded to including those who could and wanted to telecommute half the time, the greenhouse gas savings would equate to over 10 million cars off the roads. That's how vital that could be. Now, another pro is 80% of remote workers supposedly experience less job stress. Now, why that could be, because they're more relaxed in their home. Maybe it's less pressure. Maybe it's less anxiety, social anxiety. I'm not really sure why that is, but it's definitely an interesting statistic. Among the performance-based statistics, 85% of businesses confirm that productivity has actually increased, which is quite interesting because when people think of remote work, the stigma is, oh, you're at home, you're not going to work as hard, you're going to fool off, you're going to be distracted. There's so many distractions. But research actually shows it's actually quite the opposite. People actually are more focused at home. They actually work a little bit longer at home, as these numbers show. Additionally, 90% of employees say allowing for more flexible work and schedules would increase employee morale. I agree. While 77% say allowing employees to work remotely may lead to lower operating costs. There's no may in that statement. That will definitely lead to lower operating costs. If you don't have less people in a building, you don't need a larger building, and you can, rent out or lease a smaller building, less cost for you. There's not necessarily a maybe. It has to be a lower operating cost. Now, here's something that's going to be very eye-opening for people. Remote workers make $4,000 more than non-telecommuters. I would say that couples, gas. You wouldn't need a car, especially in New York. Well, at least in Florida, you'll still need a car, unless you want to Uber and take that opportunity cost away from you. But that's definitely quite interesting. So $4,000 more. So remote workers are more productive, kind of like what I mentioned earlier. So flex jobs, annually surveyed, found that 65% of respondents are more productive in their own home office than at a traditional workplace. Fewer distractions, interruptions, and less stress without a commute, minimal office politics, and a personalized environment. And 47% of them said that they strongly agree that flexible work arrangements would allow a particular worker to be more productive. Now, another thing that's quite interesting is remote workers can be healthier. Remote workers tend to take less sick days, likely due to less exposure to germs in a typical office. According to Indeed's remote work survey, 50% of remote employees said working from home reduced their sick days, and 56% said it reduced their absences. I mean, it's kind of hard to be absent when you work from home. You'd be surprised, I guess. And FlexJob's work-life relationship survey, 86% of respondents thinks flexible jobs would reduce their stress. And 89% said that they think they would be able to take better care of themselves. Now, the number one pro of this, and this is more so on the employer side rather than the employee side, is it will save companies a lot of money. And that's really what it comes down to, in my honest opinion. As an entrepreneur myself, can you guess what the number one reason why businesses fail? And by businesses, let's talk about startups. I'll give you like 5 seconds to think. The number one reason why businesses fail is because of cash flow. Say it with me. Cash flow. Cash flow is king. Now, especially when you're a startup, cash flow is the number one reason why a company will fail. If you run out of money coming in, there's no way you can operate. Especially if you're a larger company and you're expanding, if you can cut down costs, that would be incredible for you. And going remote is one of the best ways to cut down costs, because I would imagine one of the biggest costs of every company is office space. Unless they're online. And even if they are online, typically they still have office space to rent out. Now, offices can rent from, $1,000 a month to even 6 figures, depending on how many employees you have. So if you can significantly reduce that by, even 20%, that can do numbers for you. And as an entrepreneur, as a business person, you're always trying to see how you can cut down costs and keep or increase productivity and efficiency. Now, that was a lot of pros. Now let's get to the cons. Now, some of the cons are the upfront costs for employees. I think that's quite interesting. if an employer is telling the employee like, hey, you have to work from home, and if the employee for some reason doesn't have the requirements to do what they need to do, they may have to pay for that, like upfront out of their pockets. And apparently some employees have argued that if they're working remotely, employers should cover the internet costs and things like that while they're at home. I can see where they're coming from with that. I can honestly do, especially if it's involuntarily. If it's voluntarily, then no, I don't agree with them. But if it's involuntary like the pandemic, I would agree. According to Business News Daily, 75% of remote workers say that their employer don't cover their internet costs. I wonder if that's because of right now or they knew beforehand that they're going into a remote position. I still would disagree that the employer should not be doing that. And I think they should be paying for their employees' internet costs, especially if it's involuntary. Now, not really a con for consumers, but it's more so cons for industries. In terms of remote jobs, I would say that it's going to affect negatively two industries in particular. One, commercial real estate, because it kind of harps about what I said earlier, as if you're taking up less surface area because you have less people that need to go into the office, you're going to have less deals and people are going to downsize, and it's going to be more one of those things. Now, another thing that might suffer from this is probably the auto industry. If less people need to actually drive, then there's probably going to be less people that need to have a car. Now, they might be able to kind of pivot and maybe go more of the rental route, but I think the real estate industry and the auto industry would definitely take a hit from this. Now, another con, which is kind of surprising, is that a lot of work from home workers actually say they struggle with having a work and life balance. I think that's quite interesting. I'm not really sure why that is, but I do think that's quite interesting. Now that sums up the pros and cons of the potential of remote work. As you can see, we don't know what the future holds, but it is a safe guess to say that a lot of businesses, their employees either work from home still or transition to that position long term if they want to. Now that sums up this video. If you're still watching, thank you, you're a real one. And remember, at 5,000 subscribers, we are doing a giveaway for an iPad Pro with a Magic Keyboard. Now this could be used, especially if you're a college student. This could be a great tool for you to get through your 2 or 4 years. And if you are a professional, this could be a great tool of device that's a daily use. So to help us get to 5,000 subscribers, if you like this content, please like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.